Warm welcome to all audience across the globe, those who are watching us live on YouTube, ICSI channel. And today is Sunday, 12th of June. And we are in conversation with Dr. PRIYA VISWESWARAN ji from Texas, USA. She is Director, Immortality Institute. And the information that she is sharing with us in these subsequent weeks is really worth listening to and imbibing in the education ecosystem. And she is talking about new avenues for educators and youth. And nowadays, she is talking about reverse aging coach. The teachers, the educators to be reverse aging coach. And without wasting any time, I would now like to invite on screen Dr. PRIYA VISWESWARAN ma'am to tell us more about this concept and how we can incorporate these things into education. Yes, good. Namaste, ma'am, and good morning.
Namaste. Thank you very much, Chitraji. Can you hear me properly?
Yes, ma'am. Very much
okay,
audible.
Wonderful.
Ji.
I'm sorry?
Very much audible, ma'am.
Wonderful. So we are actually continuing on with our reversing diabetes talk that we have been doing for a few weeks now, 2 weeks, I think, about. So this is a part of the talk where, as I'm reading more materials on this, I feel like some of this information is so important that we should not short-circuit it or bypass it or give anything less than a full explanation as to how certain things are being recommended, why certain things are being recommended. And yes, we did cover aging reversal a week before last, and actually 2 weeks before last 2 weeks, we've been covering small points about diabetes reversal. And we will also be talking about heart disease reversal. And just to recap, we talked about how intracellular fat in the skeletal muscle, which is our voluntary muscle that we use to do our work, this intracellular fat goes and clogs the lock that is the insulin receptor, for which insulin is the key. And when insulin, the key, cannot open the lock because there's fat clogging it, then glucose cannot enter the cell and be processed to make energy for the cell. So the cell cries out, give me energy, give me glucose, give me water, hydration, give me oxygen. And the cry of many cells together is what makes this concept of systemic inflammation. Inflammation is when the whole body seems to be on fire. And I mean, we all know that when the body is under threat of infection, the body is inflamed. When there's autoimmune disease, there is inflammation. When there are other conditions such as heart disease, this metabolic syndrome, obesity and all that, we know that there is systemic inflammation. So if inflammation is the final common pathway, then what is the underlying cause of it? And that is cellular distress. Cellular distress is the underlying cause of inflammation. What can the constituent of cellular distress be? A cellular lack of oxygen, a cellular lack of hydration. Water is in fact, I could give you 20 lectures on just water and what is the importance of water to the cell. And I mean, what I'm saying is there is so much of research data, and for us to decide why hydration is important, why is water so important in our for the cellular function, day-to-day function of the cell. So I have pulled up the I have some other ones to show you before this, but for right now I just want to go over just these few slides, and as per your request we will keep it short. Let's see, let's go to slideshow and we will do from current slide. Okay, so in 2014, researchers summarized 3 different studies on this group of people called Adventists. I don't know if you know, but there are 45,000 Christian sects, 45,000 types of Christianity people. So these Adventists, there's a type of Christian religion, and they are in this place called Loma Linda in California. And these studies were conducted between 1960 and 2014. There were 3 studies. So one study had 23,000 people, the next one had 34,000, and the third one had 96,000. So nobody can say this was statistically insignificant. They were segregated into non-vegetarian, vegetarian, ovo-lacto-vegetarian, and vegan. Now, some people here consider vegetarian diet as including fish, but excluding beef and chicken. So ovo-lacto-vegetarian actually means they eat eggs and dairy products, and vegan means they don't have anything, no eggs, no dairy products. And they did this to study how increasing amounts of dairy products and meat affected their risk for dying from heart disease, diabetes, and cancer, what they call all-cause mortality. And what they found was those with more meat and dairy in their diets had increased all-cause mortality and disease-specific causes, meaning more heart disease, more diabetes, and more cancer. So there was 10 to 20% higher risk of all-cause mortality and 28 to 68% increase in death from ischemic heart disease, cardiovascular disease, cerebrovascular disease, so that is heart attacks and strokes, and 48% increase in risk of death from breast cancer, compared to vegetarians who included dairy but who cut out meat from their diets. Okay, these ovo-lacto-vegetarians or lacto-ovo-vegetarians, however you want to call them, they were 38 to 61% less likely to develop diabetes. But if they were vegan, then they were 47 to 78% less likely to develop diabetes. Isn't that a significant amount?
Yes.
Wouldn't you agree with that?
Yes.
Mind-boggling. Now I'm going to show you multiple studies that are showing the same thing again and again. So vegan and vegetarian diets offer significant protection against death from cancer, heart disease, diabetes, and those who eat more meat and dairy in the long term significantly increase their risk for death. Why are they saying long term? In the short term, it may help control blood sugars. In the short term, like a year or 2, it may result in weight loss. So it will make a person feel good, look good, but in the long term, they're going to die sooner.
Ma'am, here, can I put a question?
Please.
Is this because nowadays the milk products and dairy products, they are not pure and they are synthetic? Is that why? Because in early days, we used to say that milk is very good for health and everything. So why is that now milk and dairy products are not that good for health for long term?
So this is a very important question. I'm going to show you a lot more data, and then we're going to try and answer the question, because I'm not sure if they have done studies on organic milk versus regular milk. As you know, organic milk, those cows are not treated with hormones, prolactin to increase milk synthesis. I remember when I was a child, even in Madras growing up, the milkman would bring buffaloes. We used to drink buffalo milk. He would park the buffaloes outside our house, and there would be like a calf, and sometimes the calf would die, or I don't know what they would do to the calf. They would have a stuffed calf. They would stuff it with straw, and then they would inject the buffalo with prolactin hormone shot right before our eyes. He would give the injection, milk it, and we would all drink that milk. Now, drink meaning we didn't consume gallons of it, but 1 glass in the morning. Remember, they would tell us 1 glass in the morning, 1 glass in the evening is good for your bones and all these things when we were growing up in India. Now, I don't know. I mean, as far as I know, this organic milk, which is which is just naturally produced, right? So you don't give them prolactin injections to increase the milk yielding period for a year or 2 years after the birth of a calf. You just allow nature. So as long as the milk production is there after the birth of a calf, you take that milk. So you have to have a lot more number of cows, and you also have to allow them to be. You can't just artificially inseminate them every year so that they get pregnant and then kill the calf. And these kind of cows that are in the non-organic milk production industry die in 4 years because they are inseminated every year. They give birth to a calf, they produce milk for something like that, and literally the full thing of the cow is used up in 4 years and it dies. So now obviously compared to that, organic milk which is not produced in that way would be a lot healthier. It does cost about 25 to 30% more in the supermarket over here, but I'm not sure that they have divided this. First of all, the people who consume organic milk, they're very few in the population. It's like in the US, it would probably be 10% or less of the population that is consuming milk that is produced like that. It's expensive, and it's also, not everybody understands why, you need to have, if you have to drink milk, you have to drink it from that. But what I'm going to show you is data from all sources of animal protein. And then we can sort of infer something different from the new types of milk production. Okay, so I'm not sure an actual study has been done, but I can look that up and give you a more precise answer. I think the answer would be no, because obviously dairy farms that produce organic milk have to fund such a study. Otherwise, somebody in public interest has to do it that has independent funding. Those two possibilities are very small. So if it's okay with you, let's go through this, and I will share with you what are the findings with all sources of animal protein and fat. You'll be shocked and surprised. And from that, we may be able to successfully infer a conclusion regarding even organic dairy products, if that makes sense.
Okay? Sure, ma'am. Sure. Thank you.
Sure. So the EPIC study showed that there was an increased risk of cardiovascular death with increased protein, particularly from processed meat. So 48,000 people who were free of cancer, stroke, or heart disease. So 4 lakh, almost 50,000 people. They followed them for 12 years. And they found that people who had high processed meat intake had an 18% increase in all-cause mortality. They died more of cancer, more of heart disease, more of diabetes, more of stroke than people who were not consuming processed meat. In the Journal of Internal Medicine, the cardiovascular mortality of 40,000 Swedish women over 15 years was published. Women who ate the highest protein were 60% more likely to die of cardiovascular disease than those who ate the lowest protein. So they estimated that simply increasing the protein intake of animal protein by 10 grams a day and dropping the carbohydrate intake by 40 grams a day increased the risk of cardiovascular death by 10%. People ate total amount of protein that is found in ketogenic diets, 1 to 1.5 grams per kilogram of their ideal body weight. So for a 130-pound woman, this was between 60 and 88 grams of protein. 130 is 65 kilos. So they found that these Swedish women who were taking about 40 grams a day of protein had 60% less risk of dying of cardiovascular disease than women who were taking around 90 grams of protein a day. They had 60% greater risk. Okay. Doesn't matter if it's organic milk or not. You see, that's the point.
Right.
Hold on. It's not advancing. Let's see. Sometimes, okay. How do we advance this slide? There we go.
Yes.
Yeah, here we go. So this is why a ketogenic diet may be questionable in the long term. What is a ketogenic diet? Where less than about 10% of our calories a day are coming from carbohydrates. Mostly they're coming from protein and fat. Okay. So for example, if you look at the, I don't know if you know this Indian actress Mishti Mukherjee, who died at the age of 27 of kidney failure due to keto diet. She was on a keto diet to lose weight and to look slim, to act in movies and whatnot. And she died because of being on this high fat, high protein diet. And even the Lancet, which is the British Medical Association's journal, okay, they're the ones who eat steak and meat all the time for everything. And that's kind of their lifestyle. That's what they had over there. And this is not any kind of judgment on anybody or anything or their lifestyle or their diet. But if even they are saying it, that is an important point to note. That diets that are low in carbohydrates and high in animal fat, such as keto diet and even the paleo diet, can shorten an individual's lifespan by up to 4 years. Such an important point.
Yes, ma'am.
Let's see if we can advance this. So sorry, huh? It keeps getting stuck. Yeah. Maybe I should hand over the slide presentation to you, huh, Chitraji? 1 second, let's see.
As you wish, ma'am. As you wish. My pleasure.
Okay, thank you. So this is how a keto diet impairs kidneys. And what the way I like to remember it is keto diet, no kidneys. So when we take a keto diet, then we are saying goodbye to our kidneys, kind of. So keto diet is a high fat, high protein, low carb diet designed to put the body into ketosis, where it burns fat for fuel. So the body can use different parts of the body to burn for fuel. So the ideal keto diet should be, it's 75% fat, 20% protein, okay, even less than 10% carbs, only 5% carbs. Instead of burning carbs, the body must switch over to burning fat. And that will start in about 3-4 days of beginning following the keto plan. Now, nobody should do this on their own. It's very, very changes the metabolism of the patient a lot. They should measure their ketones production with a ketone meter, either by breath or by urine testing. So it is a complicated change in lifestyle and diet. It's not a simple thing to switch the body over from burning carbs for energy to burning fat for energy. Okay, but studies have linked this keto diet to adverse effects on the body, especially if it is followed strictly for a long time. Why? Because more protein means more blood has to go through the kidney. So the estimated glomerular filtration rate and the actual glomerular filtration rate go up. More filtration when there's more protein intake. More filtration and more blood flow to the kidney. And when we are under stress, the blood flow to the kidney is actually reduced. So those proteinaceous breakdown products that are toxic are circulating for a longer time. So the more protein a person eats, this leads to overloading the kidneys. And anybody who's already suffering from chronic kidney disease, or even if they are not, they can develop chronic kidney disease. Especially red meat can lead to kidney stone formation. And those who already have kidney diseases, or even who don't have kidney disease, can develop it. Higher intake of animal food products can make the urine more acidic and increase the level of calcium excretion. So all these things are leading to kidney failure. So high fat, high protein diet, there's more data, okay? And on heart disease too. So there's a study in 2007 from Greece. Why are we looking at studies from all these non-American countries? Because there are a lot of lobbies in America. There is a meat industry lobby. There's a dairy industry lobby. These people are making sure that their livelihoods are protected. Understandably, they are trying to protect their livelihood, and they will either pay for studies to be done in another way, or they will pay for a suppression of a certain study result, or they will pay the politicians to they will fund them legally as whatever, as their campaign funding to make sure that they're not, publicizing these results. Okay, so that's why the people who are talking about the truth are looking at studies from countries where there is not so much of the industry lobby or political influence on this kind of data that is good and the truth, right? So for example, in Greece, they had 22,000 adults they followed for 10 years with diets like the Swedish women, with 20% of their calorie intake coming from protein, which was 76 grams of protein a day. Okay. Now, Greek yogurt, you might have heard of, very, very famous, popular dish, and high in probiotics, really good bacteria. It's a very, very good food substance, but it is dairy. And they found that it was associated with significantly higher risk for premature death in comparison with diets containing only 10% protein. Now here, maybe in Greece, I don't know, even in India, they were using prolactin 40 years ago, but it's possible that in some countries, they are not injecting their cattle with hormones, and that the milk is organic, and they're not feeding. Here in America, in the regular cow farms where their regular milk is collected, the cows are fed with pork waste. The pigs are, they're killed, and the waste that cannot be sold, that is turned into some sort of food for the cows, and they're fed. That's how this mad cow disease started, right? Because the cows were eating something other than grass. So you see here in America, grass-fed beef on the beef things that they're selling, because they know that if they're fed animal waste products, then the risk of these kind of prion diseases and these weird viral diseases being transmitted to human beings goes up, a little bit at least. So what they found was higher risk of premature death in comparison with diets containing only 10% protein. So 20% protein was significantly higher risk of cardiovascular death. So they said if you replace 50 grams of carbohydrates with 15 grams of animal protein, that is 2 chicken breasts instead of 2 medium-sized apples, there is a 22% increase in all-cause mortality. Can you believe that? So the amount of animal protein needed to increase risk of premature death was not large. Very small amount, just 15 grams more of animal protein a day resulted in a 22% increase in all-cause mortality over a 15-year period, over a prolonged period. And the increased consumption of animal protein can dramatically reduce metabolic health and increase risk of premature death. Carefully controlled meta-analysis. So what a meta-analysis is you take all these studies that have already been done, and then you look at it very, 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 very carefully. So you are like, okay, did they actually, how many people were enrolled? What age groups were they? What genders were they? How much were they actually taking before and during and after the intervention? How many fell out? Why did they fall out? They actually study all of the data from 17 studies, and they actually are able to make more scientific interpretation, because they're looking at, even though they're looking at data that other people generated, they are looking at it in a much more with much more fine-toothed comb and with all these filters, and they're only taking the essence. They're just taking the juice of the findings and giving it to us. So they had 17 observational studies of more than 270,000 people, and they concluded now that low carbohydrate diets increase mortality risk. So now we're moving away from animal protein and animal fat to what a low carbohydrate diet does. A low carbohydrate diet is increasing mortality risk. So what does that mean? Can you have a high carbohydrate animal diet? It's almost impossible. To get a normal carbohydrate or a high carbohydrate diet, it has to be plant-based. So there is significantly higher risk of all-cause mortality in the long run from a low carbohydrate diet. The short-term benefits of a low carbohydrate diet for weight loss are potentially irrelevant. So let's say you lose 50 pounds of weight, 25 kilograms on a low carbohydrate diet. Now you switch back to a higher carbohydrate diet and you're gaining that weight back. Let's say you continue this low carbohydrate because you don't want to gain that 25 kilos back. So the weight loss of that 25 kilos, the health benefits given to us by the weight loss of 25 kilos is irrelevant compared to the damage to the health caused by not eating carbohydrates long term.
Right.
Is that making sense?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Even in diabetics, that's the point, right? So low carbohydrate diets result in lower fruit and fiber intake and often coincide with the increased intake of protein from animal sources, cholesterol, and saturated fat. And some combination of this is what results in increased all-cause mortality. So when we're not eating vegetables and fruit and fiber from plant sources, our overall nutritional status, actually nutrient intake, dramatically decreases. And so when overall nutrient intake dramatically decreases, our risk of death dramatically increases, even if our risk of death from higher weight has come down by weight loss. Mm-hmm. Much more than the gain associated of the lower risk of dying from weight loss. Now, here's a very, very interesting study. In 2016, Harvard University and Massachusetts General Hospital, your favorite university, they added a critical piece of information by analyzing, oh dear, hold on, let's go back. They added a critical piece of data by analyzing how diets heavy in either animal or plant protein affected mortality risk. This was called the Nurses' Health Study. And there are more than 130,000 nurses and affiliated healthcare professionals that they had followed for 26 years in a cohort fashion. Cohort means you start now and you just look at them for the next future 10, 20, 30 years. You're not, or you may intervene, or you may interfere and tell them, okay, make these changes. And to some, you'll tell them, don't make these changes. But rather than looking back at what they did that brought them here, you are starting now and growing with them forward, right? And what they found was animal protein intake was associated with significantly increased risk of all-cause mortality, and that plant protein intake was associated with significantly less risk of cardiovascular and all-cause mortality. This is huge, right? Yes, would you agree?
Yes, ma'am.
So they analyze, this is so important and interesting and illustrative, right? They did something very interesting. They took all those people who consume animal protein and they replaced 3% of their calorie source from animal protein with plant protein. So let's say they were taking whatever, 100 grams of protein a day from animals. Naturally, they told them 3 grams a day you should take plant protein instead of animal protein. Only 3%.
Right.
Right? And they found that 3% reduction of the energy from animal protein with plant protein affected the participants' risk for death from cardiovascular disease, cancer, or any cause. Replacing every type of animal protein. So it doesn't matter organic or non-organic milk, right? Replacing every type of animal protein with plant protein resulted in reduced risk of death from cardiovascular disease and cancer, regardless of where the animal protein came from. Red meat, both processed and unprocessed, this is beef. Red meat is beef. Poultry, that is chicken, fish, eggs, or dairy. It did not matter which type of animal protein was in question. Replacing 3% of these calories of animal protein with plant protein was associated with a reduced risk of premature death. Okay?
Yes, ma'am.
In addition, they found that those who were already living with diabetes, in those people, eating more animal protein raised the risk of all-cause mortality, whereas eating plant protein actually lowered the risk of all-cause mortality. Whereas most mainstream diabetes recommendations encourage the eating of more animal protein to lose weight and to stabilize blood sugar, but large-scale studies are showing repeatedly, consistently, again and again, done by different people all over the world, that animal protein is associated with an undesirable effect on the long-term risk of death than even just diabetes alone.
Gee.
Especially for those living with diabetes. So it is even more so for a diabetic than for a person who doesn't have diabetes, the risk of dying from eating animal protein. So another large-scale study in 2018 evaluated the risk of all-cause mortality in more than 15,000 adults over 25 years. Animal foods high in protein and fat such as lamb, beef, pork, and chicken were associated with higher risk of premature death, and plant foods high in protein and fat even, such as vegetables and nuts, and even whole grain breads, were associated with lower risk for premature death, suggesting that the type of diet is as important as the percentage from carbs, fat, or protein in our daily diet. So far, what all have we learned? I'm going to ask you to give me a little bit of summary. There's more slides, but if you could give me just a little bit of summary, that would be
Yes,
great, Chitraji.
I have very consistently looking at your slides, and not just looking at the slides, but I'm also listening to you. So
Thank
if
you.
you can just, I will brief that, and the basic criteria is that we should follow more plant-rich diet and a balanced diet, that is more healthy way of living for everyone. And with this, I want to ask a few questions from you. The very first question that I want to ask, ma'am, is that for a human body, what is more important, proteins or carbohydrates or both? And what is the proportion to live a healthy life?
So we have to address this in subsequent talks, because there is vast literature on nutrition and disease. The literature is vast. And so what we are trying to do is, we want to look at all of the literature and condense it into a protocol that is 20, maybe up to 40 steps long. It won't be 2 steps or 3 steps. It's going to be at least 20 steps, and it could be as many as 40 steps long. But, you know, the very wise people have said, you can either pay the price of discipline or pay the price of regret. And discipline, you know, costs pennies, regret costs hundreds of dollars. A discipline weighs ounces and regret weighs tons. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So there may be 20 steps to follow in a diet, or even 40. But even that is better than getting sick with diabetes or dying early of heart disease. Because part of our duty is to do everything we can to keep ourselves in good health. So the next few slides are actually talking about this. How much should be carbs? How much should be fat? How much should be protein? And why are we saying that even in diabetics, a high plant-based whole food diet from carbs is preferable to high fat from even a plant-based diet? Those are the following slides I had, but we will keep that for the next presentation.
Yes,
and we talked already about fat, but we have to talk about saturated fat. We have to talk about regular fat. and which is the preferred source of fat, what is the preferred source of protein, and how much of each should we take, and what is the basis for that? Like, what are the studies that have been done that show that this is the recommendation? So far, I would agree with you. It looks like animal sources of protein are a no-go long-term, especially if a person is diabetic. And it looks like even eggs and dairy are better than animal sources in terms of developing diabetes long term.
Okay.
And then it looks like to reduce the risk of dying from all cause or heart related, we must cut animal protein and we must not cut carbohydrates.
Okay, right, ma'am.
And by replacing animal protein with plant protein, even to a very small extent, like 3%, the risk of cardiovascular death is hugely reduced. And the gains are all long-term.
Okay, right.
So this is what we've learned so far. For the reversal of diabetes. Now, I'm going to talk about much more data pertaining to fat, and then we'll synthesize all of this into a recommendation for a diet. And I can talk about vegetables that are available here. Then we will talk about vegetables that are available in India, how to cook them, how to preserve and store them for a full week if you can only do once in the week. Here, most people do that who are watching their diet. They cook one day on a Sunday for 3-4 hours. And then they put it in the dabbas for everything, whatever type of food it is. And then they mix and match. Like they may have 10 different dishes that they cook on a Sunday. Okay. But on Monday, they may take 3 of this and 2 of that and 1 of that. Then Tuesday, they will change it around and take, from the 10 variety, they will choose different combos. So that way you're not eating the same thing every day, and you feel today you may want to eat something, tomorrow you may not want to eat that. Whatever it is, you have a variety, a little bit of built-in variety when you have a few more dishes than you need on a day-to-day basis. So all of this requires understanding at a very deep level based on fact, based on science, based on research. Once we have that foundation of understanding, then we can create a menu and a plan that is suitable to our body. And we have to find out what is missing in that plan that we create for our body and replace with that from the outside, replace those things as supplements. And then we measure regularly. And this is called the metabolic reversal of chronic medical illnesses like diabetes. That is what this coaching program is for. And so all this we will go into when we train the coaches will understand all this data. Then we will show them how to use certain instruments if they have, and we will help them have access to these instruments at cost to us. And they can use it. They can first learn on themselves and their family members. Then they can share it with patients or with their students. This is how you can change your body from needing fat or using fat or in being in a ketotic state back to carbohydrate state. And in case there's a day that the body wants to use only fat, then how you manage that. So then there is a body element and how that wants to consume calories on a day-to-day basis. We haven't even approached that yet. We haven't even touched that. Right now, we're just looking at consistent studies showing outside variables on inside health. We haven't looked at the inside variables on inside health yet.
Yeah, ma'am, before asking you next question, can I request if you can just stop share your screen and we can have you on screen?
Sure.
Yeah. So another question is, ma'am, who should have a keto diet? Which person should have a keto diet and why is it important? If keto diet is causing that much problem, so who should it be recommended to?
So let us say somebody has a wedding in 6 months.
Okay.
And they don't have any risk factors for heart disease or diabetes in their life. Their family members are okay. and they have like maybe 25 kilos overweight, and they want to look good for the wedding because they are the bride or the bridegroom.
Okay.
Temporarily for 6 months, they can try it. It's not even with one, I mean, even with one day, it makes a difference, but it makes a difference in the adverse direction. But you have certain things for which you have to do that, or you want to do that because you want a rapid. So keto diet is only for rapid weight loss for people who need to have rapid weight, or let us say there's somebody who is 600 pounds weight, like 250 300 kilograms in weight. Not so much in India, but here I've taken care of patients like that. And in those people, they may not even be able to get out of bed because they're so huge. And for a short period of time, it may be acceptable to do high protein, high fat diet just to switch the body over to starting to burn that fat. And so, but I would do it in addition with some other gastric surgery or something to help with the rapid transit of the food through the gut.
And that
so
too
in general, it is not recommended. That's what I'm trying to say. Either keto nor paleo.
If we take, then we should have a in consultation with the doctor.
Yes, I don't recommend either diet. See, a lot of people have done this research, and again the same result is coming. Usually it's not, when you have so many types of diet, you think that there are some pro and some con results, but there are no con results to this vegan diet. But a vegan diet is not completed in some situations nutritionally. But that was the other thing I was going to show you, was some of the biggest bodybuilders in the world. And a whole new generation of Europeans and Americans in their 20s, men, bodybuilding, vegans. I was going to show you videos of these men and what they are saying about why they switched to vegan diet. And some of them, they have never eaten meat their entire lives. White American men, because their family raised them with ahimsa awareness from very young. So that was the other point here that I was going to mention, was the, ahimsa paramo dharma, that is, I mean, to some extent, they understood that, these ancestors who said, don't eat meat and all. I mean, I'm guessing because they saw these people die sooner who are eating animal source of protein and fat.
Okay. So thank you, ma'am. Every week you are giving us consistently very important and useful information. And with this, a request have also come. And audience are, because you have also talked about kidney, impact of diets on kidney. So the audience are requesting, can madam, if you can take one session on how to save your kidney and how to make them functional well. So one session on kidney exclusively.
Absolutely. This is my area of expertise, or rather not expertise, but I would like to say my area of supreme interest. So I would be very, very happy to share that with you. I will talk about diet and kidney disease. Is that the question? Or just everything, medicines, diet, supplements, everything?
Diets and how to keep kidney well.
I will talk about, I will talk about diet and how to keep the kidneys from getting worse or not developing kidney disease. Absolutely.
So
I'd be happy to do that.
Can we look forward towards that next week?
Next week. Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Thank you.
And
with this, once again, thank you so much, ma'am. And with your blessings and your valuable guidance, we are learning more and more from you. And I am hopeful that all the audience, those who are watching, will definitely incorporate these good things into their daily habits and make their living, their education, and their understanding more empowered. So thank you so much.
Just if they wait for 4 more weeks, we can wrap this up with a bow. So we want to talk about fat, we want to talk about protein, we want to talk about the ideal quantity and quality of plant food, right? And how to get it, how to source this plant food, what is the best source of this, and once we understand the whole entire big picture, then we can formulate a much better diet. So rather than doing it piecemeal, I would do it collectively. And also today I had more slides about taking a normal to high carbohydrate plant-based diet is the opposite of advice most diabetics get all over the world. So how do they manage their sugars if they're taking a normal to high plant carbohydrate source diet and a low protein plant diet, low fat as well, for those reasons, each one for its own reason, right? Low plant fat so that the insulin mechanism continues to work, even if it's plant source. We already saw the data for that. And the carbohydrates have to be normal or high if they're plant source. We saw the data for that. And what about the plant protein? How much of that? And also what fats are okay, what fats are not, how many, like you said, how much percentage from each group of foods, and what would that diet look like? You know, how do you prepare for that diet? How do you plan and prepare and execute such a diet? Will your hunger be satisfied? Will your insulin requirements go up? Will you need more oral anti-diabetic medicine or injectable anti-diabetic medicine other than insulin? So these are all things that, so what is relevant and what is important for long-term health? And what is it that we should not get afraid of, and what is it that we should be more careful about? So all this will go into that metabolic diabetic coaching. It's not a small topic, but it is the much better way to get a handle on diabetes than drugs. You have to take drugs because they're life-saving. But to come off the drugs is what and just today's lesson alone is not complete. The complete advice is what I'm trying to say. We have to put it all together and give those 20 points to follow. 20 to 40 points. Yeah.
So the coming weeks will be more interesting as the previous weeks are. So
absolutely.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I appreciate you so much. I appreciate you and Major General Dr. Gulshan Sharma ji for the opportunity to address and to speak with both of you and with our Indian brothers and sisters. Thank you. Jai Hind. God bless you. I'm so grateful to you, Chitra ji. I appreciate you most gratefully and with most heartful appreciation. Thank you.
We are grateful to you, ma'am. Thank you.
Take care. Thank you. See you next week. Looking forward to it.
Sure.
Thank you. Take care.